as always, this is obviously with your support and with your blessings and good wishes. This is again one of the initiatives that Voice and Data has taken along with Cisco. On the objective, obviously, I think for all of us is, as the tagline says, they're redefining tomorrow together. And that's the reason that in this series of roundtable discussions that we want to do, we want to get all these stakeholders which form the crux of the telecom industry. So the operators, the cable players, the ISPs, the consultants, the equipment and technology companies, the value-added service companies, and so on and so forth. So it is the industry's own platform, and the idea is to share our experiences, our learnings, our ideas with each other, again to grow together, redefine our future together. As the invitation mail which was sent to all of you in the beginning very clearly states, we are talking of how do we move from being voice-centric to very different ball game, which is data-centric. And I think that's the key that we want to try and discuss here in this forum. We know, I think that the genesis is, we know the kind of growth which data is seeing. I think a lot of examples can be given in terms of how many pictures are being posted on Facebook, and what's the kind of viewership one is seeing on YouTube, and so on and so forth, and how the entire social media, whether it's WhatsApp or any of those, how they are really engaging people, bringing people together. But today you have people buying phones because they want to be on WhatsApp. They want to be on some of the initiatives which are social in nature, or which are more citizen-centric, which in that sense. So very clearly, data, services, video, that is one area which is very rapidly growing, and it is completely got everybody into a bit of a tizzy as to how do we handle that. And the challenge seems to be that that's an area which is growing, but the revenues comparatively are not growing there. And voice, as we all know, what's happening in the field of voice. So the net result is that the business models are getting impacted, and I think all the operators are going back to the drawing boards and sitting together and seeing what they need to do. So you have the revenue pressure, there is also the pressure to bring down costs, at the same time build more and more agility into the systems and go after the new opportunities, and most of them are around data and video and services. So that makes innovation a very critical piece in the whole game. What obviously we cannot ignore is the changing user profile, the changing user expectations, how user experience is becoming very critical for perhaps everybody. Earlier you used to say that this was the creamy customer, this was the sort of run-of-the-mill kind of a customer, we really don't need to bother. But I think all that is changing, and the user experience is becoming very critical. So therefore, transforming and the speed at which we transform is also very critical. All this is there on one hand. On the other hand, we have networks, and these networks are huge, complex networks built over years, and these networks are there. So there is voice and data and video and security and IT and applications, you name it, and networks, layers upon layers of networks are getting built, and obviously many of them are from, most of them are from multiple vendors. So that adds to the challenge in terms of how do you really transform your infrastructure. Just to go back on the data today is often cited as also a problem in the sense that it is taking a lot of bandwidth, it is taking a lot of spectrum, and if you talk to many operators, they will say that is the reason for a lot of other problems, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think you know all of them. So data has potentially got offers a great opportunity in terms of revenue, in terms of user experience, in terms of the next generation services that we are talking about. But at the same time, there are very clear and perhaps very strong limitations which the operators are experiencing. So once again, I think what we want to discuss here is that how do we really make this transition? What are the things that need to be done? Where are the operators on this? What are the kind of challenges they are facing? What are their expectations from the equipment companies and other solution providers? I think that's the objective. And as I said in the beginning, this is this is an industry's own forum. This is a closed door platform, industry's own forum. So I think it will be good if we are all very forthright and frank in what we discuss. So so that's the idea. Before I invite Mr. Rajat Kathuria, who is the Chief Executive of the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations, to give us a macroeconomic picture of what this is all about. And it's not just, otherwise often we tend to see everything from the perspective of a telecom operator, the technologies, the markets, and so on and so forth. But to give us a very quick macro picture of what the new revolution is going to be all about, I would like to invite Mr. Rajat Kathuria to sort of give us his views on this. Rajat.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed, for inviting me here and for this onerous task of trying to tell the industry itself what impact it's having in the overall macro economy of the nation. So what I thought I'll do is, what I think I'll do is context, rather than speak about telecom. Of course, I'll speak about telecom, but kind of contextualize telecom where I see it or where we see it in terms of where it's heading, how it's driving the economy. If you recall the financial crisis of 2008, which affected most industries across the world, including in India, one defining example that stood out in contrast, I think, if you look at the numbers at that time, was the telecom industry in India and telecom industry in a number of other countries, but especially in India. It was an industry which I wouldn't say was recession-proof, but it stood out in contrast to most of the declining industries that we saw in India. There was a fiscal stimulus that kind of pump-primed manufacturing back and services back, but services to a large extent, and telecom in particular, was one of the saviors for India as we kind of saw the macroeconomic crisis that started with the collapse of Lehman Brothers spread to India. And services to a large extent has been the savior of India through 2000, the first decade of the 2000, services was growing at 8-9%, agriculture was down, but services was growing very, very fast. And in that context, I think it was imperative for us in India to have got the institutional structure, the governance structure around telecom right, because there was a transformation that was happening within telecom. We didn't, I think, to be fair to government, to be fair to policy, I don't think we saw the transformation, and I'm not going to go back to the history, what happened in the 90s, mid-90s and early 2000s, but we didn't see the kind of massive transformation that was going to happen in telecom. Mobile took off especially in 2003 with the introduction of calling party pays and a host of other, I think, policy changes. Mobile just took off in a manner that was probably unprecedented in any parts of the world. We were adding 20 million subscribers a month at a time, and that was more than what we had added since independence all the way to the liberalization of the telecom of the Indian economy in 1991. There were, I think, less than 20 million subscribers. In 1998, there were about 24 million subscribers, and we were adding 20 million a month during the heyday of the mobile revolution in India. It hasn't stopped. I think the mobile revolution will continue, but as Abraham said, it will continue with data. But that was the kind of transformation that happened. And it was unprecedented, it was unanticipated, and it brought with it challenges in terms of our institutional and governance structure. In fact, it is a manifestation of the challenges that we are facing in a macroeconomy as a whole, in the sense that when an economy grows very fast at 8, 9, 10%, the institutional structure, I think, plays catch up. Or it's an empirical, it's a stylized, right? But our institutional structure was playing catch up and this is not just telecom, this is the entire governance structure in the country. It was playing catch up to the rapid growth we experienced during the 2003-2008 period. There are a number of scams that unfolded in India, including in telecom, but the institutional structure wasn't able to keep up with the pace of growth that we saw in India, and at times it was touching double. This was 5 years at a stretch we grew, and we played catch up. And there are kind of very good, I would say, academic works which shows that often institutional structures play catch up. And I just spent a little bit of time saying what we need to do in telecom to respond to what Ibrahim said, what we need to do in telecom to really address this institutional and governance agility or weakness that we have seen. As I said, telecom has grown much faster. It's been kind of unprecedented growth, and to expect that the institutional structure and governance structure will absorb all of those massive changes was, I think, it's something that we should do, but we should have expected that we would not have been able to absorb them immediately for the reasons I've just cited. Across the world, growth happens, and then institutional structures, governance structures catch up. And in one sense, I think technology will always be ahead of the regulator or the governance structures. But the impacts have been massive. Telecom today constitutes, on our estimates, about 3% of GDP. It's a major contributor to GDP. If you include all the externalities or the impacts that we have calculated in India, mobile gives an impact of about 1.5% of GDP for every 10% increase. Internet, slightly less. But here's the bet that we are making, which is that when internet achieves that critical mass, or when data achieves that critical mass, the impacts of data will far kind of dwarf the impacts that we've seen of mobile telephony, which is about 1.5% of every 10% increase. I think internet will lead to much greater impacts, and we are in the process of estimating those. And I'm happy to say that the initial results look very good, that the impacts will be much higher, and that's what data will do. And when it connects all the internet of everything, internet of things, when it connects everything, you can see the kind of transformational impacts that it could have. So we are betting that internet impacts will be much larger. But the challenge is that when data begins to dwarf voice, and data revenues reach 90% and voice revenues get 10%, which is the absolute reverse of what we see today, then we need to have some thinking, and we have to, you have to, the stakeholders have to educate, the policymakers have to, the stakeholders have to educate on what they think is the best option for the industry. For example, do we need to have so much fragmentation in the industry which results in fragmentation of spectrum, or should we have consolidation? The trade-off, of course, is lessening of competition. So can you have enough competition with lesser number of operators, so that spectrum, which is a scarce resource, gets divided amongst fewer players, and therefore people have adequate spectrum? So the trade-off is lessening of competition, but at the same time you would have operators who would have adequate spectrum. So these are trade-offs, and which the policy maker needs to understand to be able to create that governance structure, which would make room, which will provide the enabling conditions for the data revolution. So I think the institutional structure will have to change. It will change, but that disruption that is happening now will leave a manifestation in terms of, there will be some people who will have to fall by the wayside. This is a process of Darwinian competition. Some people have to exit the market, but also the policy maker, and that's the major point that I wish to make, the policy maker will need to adapt, regulatory structures will need to adapt, and for that, it's not, the structure is not going to fall from heaven. It's people like you, it's the experts that need to influence, that need to provide wisdom to the policymaker to be able to enable that change so that telecom can deliver what we think in ICRIA and what I think personally are the huge kind of transformational impacts right from the bottom to the top. The huge impacts it can deliver. I'm not saying that institutional policy structure is the only impediment that exists today, but it's one of the important kind of issues that needs to be addressed by policy so that telecom can make the huge impacts that it has the potential to. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think you have made some very relevant points, and perhaps in the larger framework, as there's more maturity amongst the operators and there's more stability, I think some of these things become very, and I think technology per se will also, when you talked about governance, for instance, I think technology, as we go forward, technology will have a critical role as perhaps the technology is simplified or there is more advanced technology which is brought in. I think we will see the governance issues also handled perhaps better in many of the organizations. Thank you so much, and I think some of the points that you raised perhaps will be discussed when we come to specific questions. I would now like to invite Mr. Sanjay Kaul, who heads the service provider business at Cisco for Asia, for India and SAARC region, to share his views on how can we, given all the bleak scenario which I tried to paint, how is unlocking the value of the service providers network, how is that possible, and what is your picture and what is your vision on that?
Very good. Thank you very much, Graham, and great presentation.
In fact, Mr. John Chambers had made a very dramatic statement a couple of months back, I think last year at the Mobile World Congress. I don't want to, but I think that also, it was a very alarming kind of a statement, but as a technology visionary, I think we need to understand what's your take on this.
Sure. So I think before I begin, a couple of rules. Let me tell you, the seed was sown almost 6 months ago, at Telecom Leadership Forum, where Pradeep and Ibrahim said, we have an idea like this. Where we bring in the industry folks together and we can talk openly. And I made a statement saying, whenever you do it, we're with you. So I think great to be here. And you will notice I don't put any Cisco logo there on the slide. I have a couple of slides to show you. And that's the testimony that we really want to be actually participating in this forum. And rather than sell you Cisco technologies, which we have many, we focus on the issues and how we can be part of this forum so we can move the needle forward for your industry. So if you move this, couple of statistics, can I use this one? There are a lot of data points, and I need a couple of slides to show you. So what you see here is a gist of a V&I report, and that's a research we do every year. We look at what's happening with internet and mobile traffic across the globe, and I think we then do a specific study for India and see what is the trends. And I mean, just not to bore you with the numbers here, but the trends that we are seeing are staggering. Starting from the bottom, you see over mobile video is growing at a phenomenal pace. I think 65% of all the data that you'll create as a service providers will be video. Similarly, I think we see clear trends that 3G proliferation happening, 4G being rolled out more aggressively than we thought. I think that creates that faster bandwidth, faster speeds available. We also see, machine to machine, long talked in this industry, almost last 5 to 6 years, and now finally, I think it's happening, and the change of pace is faster in developing markets than in the developed markets, and we've seen what happened to mobile commerce or e-commerce in this country. And lastly, connecting back to you, Mr. Couturier, you said broadband penetration means is good news for economy, right? And I think we're seeing that mobile broadband, today somewhere around 300 million will grow up to almost up to 600 million broadband lines. I think that's a great news because that's straight boost to economy, and as a result, it creates the wealth that we need to execute on, what we call data factory. So the second one then, again, some numbers there, but I think what's important here is to understand is the 4 forces that are coming together. I think it's truly happening, and we all experience this in our daily lives, and the shift that the user behavior has gone through in the last 2 to 3 years. I can tell you any age group, morning you get up and the first thing you look at is your social networks. That's the kind of user behavior we're adopting, and I think that is really, causing some disruptions when you have social networks, the clouds, the mobile, and the analytics coming together into the mix. I think it's creating the digital disruption, and I think that is a bit scary, and it's at the same time very, very opportunistic. And that's what John Chambers said, because I think what he said was based on a thorough research we did globally, which revealed, they went out across the globe and talked to operators, vendors, and other participants of this industry. And what the research revealed was that 50% of all incumbents that are thriving today will not exist in the next 10 years. And it's not very hard to believe. We've seen Nokias of this world. 5 years back, I think they were on top of the charts, and they're more or less gone. I think there are many such examples. So the point here is that we, whether we play a role as an operator or a vendor, we got to reinvent ourselves constantly, and we got to be before that the market transition takes over. So the pace of change is what we need to focus on, and I think this is basically 4 things that makes the difference. I think the first is the value shift. I think you guys have experienced it with WhatsApp and likes coming into the industry. What did WhatsApp do? I think they destroyed over $50 billion of revenue in the telecoms business. Yes, as a company they made some, their valuation was around $20 billion, but net it was $30 billion destruction of the value. And I think you have many such entrepreneurs, surprisingly most of them in 20s and early 30s, who are going to change the game because they're looking at this business in a very different perspective. If we take an example from another industry or a connected industry, Tesla, for example, look what Tesla is doing. I was reading a blog yesterday from Mr. Musk, which is the founder, owner of Tesla. He's really taking heads on with Apple. He's saying all the people that I fired in my company has become a graveyard in Apple. So I think this is the kind of disruption. It's the same boring industry where industry leaders like General Motors and likes are folding Volvos and Saabs and so on and so forth. And So the point we're trying to make here is that this digital disruption is a phenomenal opportunity, but we, as jigs of this ecosystem or participants of this ecosystem, we need to constantly reinvent ourselves and catch the wave before it goes off. So I don't know if it's visible to you. Basically, I think we looked at a little bit challenges for service providers, and of course, after I finish, I would like you guys to respond because you're dealing with this on a daily basis, but from our point of view, I think we see 3 or 4 things happening. I think first is, of course, the complexity is increasing. I mean, we'll hear from Shyam and others who are planning their networks, on a daily basis, and it's a shift every day depending on what happened out there in the marketplace. I can tell you, many years back, I used to be a radio planner, and it was fairly easy. You went out, you did look at the market, you designed the network, and the rest was easy. You just roll out the base stations. I think today, a couple of kids going down to the base station and downloading 2-hour movies, I think your planning is out of the window. So I think that's the second piece is how do you deal with this? Because all this complexity is increasing, is a challenge in terms of the integration costs, because you want to create a service platform that's agile, that is using the underneath value that you have in your foundation layer. I think Ibrahim, you mentioned we have built networks over 10 years, and it's billions of dollars that have gone into that. So how do you now make this network agile as you are transforming, so you can create value out of this and be able to connect it to the app developers or anyone who has a cool service to offer? I think that is the challenge you have. And so as a result, I think there are 3 or 4 things. I think first one is, revenue. Is that needle moving? You've grown data tremendously last 2 years. I think it's over 70%. Depending on the operator, we'd like to hear your numbers, but all in all, on a country level, about 70% growth. And where is the revenue? Revenue is obviously not moving at the same pace, which means that you are forced to create bandwidths, you're forced to create networks that have to support this data boom that we're talking about, where video will be 80% of the data. So and the last piece is the agility, because I think we talked for many years now over the top, whether they are enemies or they're friends, and I think we debated in many forums, and I think we coexist. I think they are coming, sometimes riding on our network, stealing our show, but we still are around. And if you look at the last 5 years, what these guys have done to you is they've extracted maximum amount of value, and simply by riding, of course they had innovation, riding on your assets. And I think by bringing in agility into your networks, I think you will be in a position to go and work with these other top players and offer them value prop, so they're interested in working with you. I think that's the key. I think we are all struggling, but I think the quicker you fix that, you will be back at the center of the orchestrations, at the center of the ecosystem. So I think this is kind of a message here on this one. And now what are we doing, and why am I here talking in this forum? Because of course, so I think what we're doing from our standpoint, at the core we are an engineering company, and we want to catch the wave, so we're ready when you guys need us to make the change. And some of the technology changes that have happened, if I start with first, is cloud and software driven systems which are open. I think we have started our journey with a hardware company, and I think we've tremendously transformed ourselves. And I'm not sure if we're 100% there, but we're moving at a pace so we're ready when you want us to support you. I think that's one. Second is orchestration and virtualization. I think One of the things I said was the OPEX and the cost is a big, tremendous challenge we will have as an industry because as we proliferate down to the rural area, we must realize they allow consuming data, but at the same time, affordability is not there. I think in many cases, when we talk about digital India, I think digital literacy, are they able to use what we are laying down there and so on and so forth. So hence technologies that can help you converge, that can help you transform your networks, reduce the cost, increase the agility will be relevant for you. The fourth one is programmability and automation. I think here what we're looking at is the foundation layer. We've been together with you all laying down routers and switches, building backhaul and the front haul. So now we are creating technologies that will help you to put that service platform on top of this foundation, so you can over time start extracting value, and as a result, deliver on those 3 ethos that I talked about. Merchant Silicon is another innovation. We're putting on top. We're creating products which are give you flexibility in terms of cost points, which gives you feature set, which is relevant when you're moving into the digitization world. So one of the challenges you guys have when you're going out connecting machines, connecting everything that can be connected, is you're creating an enormous amount of data. And the data, when you treat it, you get information, and when you treat information, you get analytics. And analytics is where the value lies. And key for you is, how do I get that analytics in right time so I can extract value? Because if you get the data late, it's perishable, it loses meaning and value for you. So we're trying to create intelligent networks so we can bring intelligence close to the edge of the network, so where you capture that intelligence, that information, analyze it, and the data you can then use in targeting your customers, whether they're machines or people. So this is few things that are sort of ready for you to leverage. I think we believe it's a little bit our ethos, our strategy. We say simplification and speed. I think as I said, it begins with us and transforming ourselves, and we believe we're 80% there. We still have 20% to go, but we've made a big leap in terms of moving in that direction. Customer experience is going to be key for you. Nobody gives a damn about you have a network which is got availability of 99.999. When I'm consuming data, video, it is that particular clip that I downloaded. How did I feel when I was enjoying, when I was experiencing it? I think that's what matters. The is a new norm. I mean, you got to reinvent business models. I think India has been pretty innovative. When you created the voice factory, I think Bharati's and rest of you, I think, really created models which were unheard globally, and you created cost equations which were world class. And I think a similar thing has to happen in the data business. And one, that we create cost points by creating business models together with the entire ecosystem. So you create a cost point which is bearable by our masses, because that's where we will be able to monetize it. We see video is becoming a new voice. I think a number of leading telcos have made this as their company's jargon, but clearly if 80% of the data is video, I think we better do something about it and make sure at least half of it is showing up on our bottom line and in our revenues. 4K content will slowly come in. I think we've made a start. India was, by the way, the first country where we launched 4K content. I think 3 of the leading operators in the world were Indian operators, Bharati, Videocon, and Tata Sky. And lastly, we believe Wi-Fi will win indoor, whether it's a head net or small cell combination. 4G, 5G will be in there, and fiber in the ground. I think this is our belief will be the recipe. And now coming to the point where I started, I think Telecom One, as I have understood from Mr. Gupta, Ibrahim, and others, is a forum where we'll have an open chat, and I think that's my humble request. open up. I think we don't want to turn this into a sales pitch, I would like to, but so I invite you. I think we're committing ourselves, whatever it takes to, serve tea and coffee in these round tables, but it's your presence that will make a difference. We're hosting another one in Mumbai, and we'll continue to do it, and you guide us. What is important to you? What are the important issues? So we can make sure we really prepare well, and together with cyber media and thought leaders out here. So with that, I stop. But before I stop, let me quickly show one slide. It's pretty hard to read it, but charter for this telecom one is threefold, because we cannot change the world. I think it is. We should focus on what we can impact, and I think we thought architecture, business models, and customer experience could be three broader parameters that we could kind of keep to the center of our discussion. So with that, Ibrahim, over to you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Sanjay. I think we have given a perspective, and I think what you were saying is that this is a journey that we have to take together, and technology challenges will be there, but I think the solution to them is also technology. So without really taking any more time, let's come to the point, and which is that how do we really make this shift? How do we really make this move from voice? Or could I ask you to come here, please? Yeah. So let me. What we will do is that we have a fairly large number of questions, and at the same time we have a very eminent set of speakers. So let's set a few house rules. Is that I will throw open the question, and anyone from you could take it, and then we could have a couple of counter questions or observations on that, and then we move on to the next question. And in the interest of time, if we can keep the points in the answer very specific, I think that will help all of us. So I think the first question is emanating from whatever has been said so far, is it really that after 10 years, almost 50% of the companies will become irrelevant? Is that going to be the impact of data? Is that going to be the impact of us not being really prepared to grab the new opportunities to handle the challenges that are currently staring us in the face? So do we think that really there is a big threat as well as an opportunity out there, and operators need to take this head on? Otherwise there is going to be this crisis in the next few years that some of us will really not be relevant, perhaps be out of business. So could I invite either Mr. Arvind Bali or Shyam from Airtel, being the biggest operator in the country, your views on this? Any of you?
Yeah, I think I agree that not 70%, but definitely a lot of Indian operators will be in this incoming time, because the way the changes are coming, the shift actually has brought a lot of change. The shift has suddenly made the total requirements so different that whatever you try to do, I think changes are faster than that, and it needs quite a heavy investments, and because it needs huge investments, then the scale and size has to be very different. So coming to your point that yeah, there are some good problems and there are some bad problems related to data. So for us, as our company, we feel data has been brought good things, like the spectrum what we are holding is very valuable, and requirements have suddenly changed in 2 years' time. Like the same spectrum 2 years back was valued at X amount. Today, it is becoming much more valuable just because there is a requirement of LTE data. And this change, nobody is able to really foresee. Like we really can't predict and project in the next few years how much change will happen. As long as it was a voice, it was very easy. Like you knew that average talking time, how many international calls you make or domestic calls you make or STD calls you make, how many customers will move and teledensities, how it will change. And accordingly, it was very easy to work out networks and work out requirements. But when it comes to data, like nobody is able to really predict. Whatsoever you try to project, I think it goes totally wrong, because you start counting that people will start downloading movies, but then they start downloading Blu-ray movies, and then now they're talking about 4K movies. Everything means 8 times, 4 times more data requirement, and there's no limit that this much only you will do. And then all the usages, anyway the usage is coming, it needs so much of data, whether you're doing shopping on Flipkart, when you try to buy something, then it throws you option, and then you download some video, you see the product. So everything is data. And it is the way demand and consumption of all these things are increasing, it is changing it. So I would say that from operator's point of view, it is throwing its own kind of challenges. Like, I think Shah will agree with me, like there was a time when we were designing networks, and for redundancies, we had microwaves, right? For example, if there is a fiber cut, dual fiber cut, triple fiber cut, at least, you had some. Now, when you are talking about data pipes, ultimately fiber you can't replace. You have to have fiber, and if there is a cut, there is a cut, and ultimately you can't do anything. You can't do anything through microwaves, and those kind of microwaves are not there. So all has got its, I think it is throwing very different challenges, and requirements are very different. In our country, like as we all know that so many operators, spectrum is only this much, 45 megahertz of 1800, or this much of 900, and this much of 700, but population is billion plus, and everybody needs data, and how much will be required. So technologically, I think a lot of new things, and differently everybody has to think, work on carrier aggregation. That is something which is going to give some comfort. But then carrier grade Wi-Fi's, that is going to bring a lot of change. So all those things are definitely new things which will be coming. But then these new things will stay only for 1 year or 2 years. And anything what you try to do
that is the challenge of technology.
Cost you billions and billions,
yeah.
right? And how much time you will get to recover your capex, only time will tell.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think, very, very important points, and these are issues I think which most of us are facing. Shyam, could you throw some light on how do you view this? And so Airtel has been doing a lot of things, a lot of announcements, and of late you have really taken the mind share. So what I want to understand is that how is that in sync with your movement towards data? And
so let me start by the age-old saying that the only thing which is constant is change, so for sure the shape and form of the industry will change. The speed at which technology is evolving, the speed at which coexisting players are kind of collaborating together to create newer and bigger values, some kind of outside the box thinking. This shape and form in what we call as telecom service providers will surely not be there. From TSPs, if I may, we will evolve to what we believe as DSPs, the digital service providers. And Rajat alluded to this fact, and he made a very poignant statement about the contribution of consumption of data to the GDP. So if you look at the conventional telecom, you're talking about the contribution from a telecom perspective basis the fact of connecting people, and this connectivity is driving productivity, this connectivity is driving consumption, and hence the overall value of economy is growing up. But when you move from this conventional connectivity to what I call as digital service, your share of digital life increases, and this share of digital life is very important. What kind of transactions you start doing using your device. You not only talk, you not only use video, you will definitely use video big time. 80% is a very realistic assumption, we believe, as total percentage of data. But you almost consume or live your life through a window called your digital device. And this takes over not only the overall contribution as part of the industry to economy, but this also takes over as the whole ubiquity of the digital services as a platform. And this transformation from a classical and I believe I'm fond of acronyms, and I believe, and Arvind also referred to this fact, that old days a classical telecom service provider's network is driven by two fundamental C's: coverage and capacity. And these were the basic Bible of the network planners. You need to plan for coverage and you need to plan for capacity. These days the network with these kind of technologies are very, very flexible from both coverage and capacity, and I believe there are 5 typical vowels which will rule the networks of the future: A, E, I, O and U. A will stand for networks which are aware. E will stand for networks which are elastic. I will stand for networks which are intelligent. O will stand for, and I thought of using orchestration, but I thought optimization is a better and more relevant with our spectrum scarce industry. And U would stand for ubiquity of the network. 99.95 is not needed, 100 is what is required. And if you look at these 5 vowels, 3 of them are driven by technology. You can make your networks aware, you can make your networks intelligent, and you can make your networks elastic using technology. But 2 of them, most importantly, and again from a policy and macroeconomic perspective, are driven by what I call resources. Ubiquity is a function of resource. It's a function of towers, it's a function of cell sites, it's a function of how closer and denser can you reach to the network. And elasticity is a function of spectrum. In a country which has 2,000 customers per site as compared to 300 or 400 customers per site globally, in a country which has each one of those sites with 5 times the number of customers radiating 15 to 20 megahertz as compared to 80 to 100 megahertz compared to the rest of the 1:5, 1:5 ratios make us any which way straight away handicapped by 1:25 from a resource perspective. Now my question and my concern is, will we be able to hedge this 1:25 ratio by using these 3 technological innovation? The answer is very clearly no. So unless we come midway in crossing this bridge, taking this together, both from the technology evolution perspective and resource availability perspective, we will not be able to transform as an industry, as a country to a DSP based telecom network, a digital service provider, where you live your life in a digital way. Digital natives, for example, and we've all seen those youths and children who, before saying good morning, they ask what is the Wi-Fi password, and these are the guys who are our future customers and who are our future consumers. And how do we create a network that is not only ready but aware, intelligent, and ubiquitous for this? So, short story, form and shape will definitely change. We'll move from TSP to DSP. Anyone who can make that transformation will be there, and everybody else will be in a different shape and form.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think without making this very scary, but I think the point is that, as you said, I think change is the only constant, and there are so many factors which are sort of building into this change, which we are all trying to do. It's also not going to be very easy at the same time. Yeah. So, Rob, could we have your views? I think you came in a little late, but we are basically talking about the data paradox. So, data is huge. It has got potential. It is eating up a lot of resources, and at the same time, we are really not very sure how to monetize it. So, what's your view on this, and how do you think operators should be moving forward?
Talk about a complex question. I'm sure we'll spend a lot of this evening talking about it. I guess the fundamentals of being an operator, the fundamentals of carrying customers' data, the technology might change, exactly what we're carrying changes from voice to data to video to who knows what's next. But the fundamentals of providing that service very reliably, that part I don't think changes. If anything, it just becomes more and more and more important. What part of that is most challenging to us? Yeah, that starts to change. Shami talked about coverage and capacity. I guess a lot of that remains just the same for us, but really the challenges move to the fact that the only thing that will give us the capacity is fiber, so it's fiber coverage. Providing the radio coverage, the technology comes along and it changes quite rapidly, but without the backhaul coverage, the radio coverage can't deliver what's needed. But if you talk about someone's digital life, the share of our life, the share of our spend that is digital is just going up and up and up. And as service providers, be it telecom or digital, we've got two questions. What share of a customer's digital life do we carry? And what share of a customer's digital life do we actually own? Because just carrying that share of their digital life, it's really important, but it's only one part of the story nowadays. It used to be pretty much that carrying their voice was the key thing we needed to do. Nowadays, carrying their data, it's only a small part of the story. It's an old example, but once upon a time, essentially I owned, as an operator, the customer's entire experience with their phone. Nowadays, if I push this, there's 2 of the little boxes on this that I own. The rest of it I only carry. And figuring out how to derive the best value from the rest of that ecosystem, the competition in it, I think that's very important for all of us, on top of that business of carrying.
Yeah.
If I will just add to what Rob just said, if you look into is there now? Okay, so now just adding to what Rob just said, if you look into numbers, so one of the largest equipment vendors, look at Ericsson's been there for over 200 years, and if market capitalization is a metric to go by, they're somewhere around 35 billion. You look into the third largest, global operator, Airtel, would be around 20 billion, and WhatsApp we all know less than 4 years and where they are. So I think just extended on what Rob said, where are we really owning that space versus are we just a part of it? So I think the normal, what was earlier carrying voice, now has changed, and unless there is a strategic shift, some of these telecom service providers, technology companies may want to do it, and obviously it's a difficult question as to how that happens. But unless that strategic shift is not happening, I think the new normal for these companies are they are more confined as brick and mortar companies, right? So it's obviously it is required their existence, but what exactly makes the shift? The second question is about money. So if you are in the business of carrying stuff, which means that there is lower customer experience which you can influence and change, and obviously the margins are lower, then how much money are you getting to expand and accelerate? So these are two things which have to be looked into combination, and then accordingly some of these companies will have to evolve in form of this strategy, invest, and possibly become like Shyam said, instead of a telecom service provider, we become a digital service provider and so on and so forth. So I think that's where the whole debate starts.
So, Ibrahim, let me add to what he said. I think India has primarily been a wireless country where everybody talks about mobility, everybody talks about wireless communication. Is that leading to a problem? Possibly yes. If you look at people and think about it from people's perspective, then I'll go back and rope in into what I'm trying to say is, if you look at offices around, everybody has a desk phone, but everybody's talking from a cell phone. The reasons could be many. It could be regulation, which is not allowing you to swiftly move from a DSP to legacy. I mean, it could be many reasons. It could be many reasons. I'm not going into these, but yes, there is. And I think it is very important that, as he said, that the organization have to think, the telecom providers have to think, what is it that their sole objective is? The objective is to carry data, voice, video, whatever you call it, from point A or point B, or the objective is to provide the right kind of the user experience a person needs. And if that second is what you need, then have you differentiated your networks properly to manage the changing requirement? The There can't be one paint for all. You have to create that. And just to say, I'm not moving towards the internet at all. So that's not the point I'm trying to make. But having said that, there has to be a differentiation, and that is where the mindset is. So can we start thinking, just to think about it, like you mentioned Sanjay about the Tesla thing. If there's going to be a driverless car, have we decided what is the kind of communication network which will drive the driverless car and there? And that has to be, I mean, as like my Airtel colleague said, has to be 100%. Is there an insurance model which is ready for a driverless car? What insurance model an insurance company will decide, and what will be the role a telecom company will play in helping you decide the insurance model for a driverless car? These are the questions I think if you answer and start looking backwards and redefine what is the way out. The way out will be different and for different people. And subsequently, I think what Sanjay mentioned is the right game to look at it. What are the challenges and how we are going to mitigate it? Is cloud the answer? Maybe yes, but not 100%. Is on-ground network the answer? Maybe yes, but again not 100%. So there has to be some kind of a differentiation which has to be brought about, which I find personally in Indian market is rare to find, and that is something which we need to really look at.
Thanks. Anybody else would like to Rajat? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ibrahim. You know, you set up a big challenge when you started by quoting Mr. Chambers. Nobody can afford to say that he was wrong. So, at the risk of trying to reinterpret it, I would say that I think the digital world is going to transform everything that's around us. Some organizations will metamorphose. They won't be the way we see them today. Will they die? Yes. In some form or the other, some of them may die, but there will be a rebirth. And I think it's the rebirth that we have to look at, which from a regulatory perspective has to be managed. And I think there are a couple of things, and I've heard these diverse thoughts around me, and I just want to put out a reality of the India situation. The India story actually is that we are, data-wise, we're still single digits in relation to the actual size of our network. Let me remind everybody of a few facts. Number one, the world in between the period January to June of 2015, the world added 87 million subscribers. In the same period, India added 36 million subscribers. That's over 40% of the world, right? Now, you might say this is a lot of upside, so India's still got scope, but there's a lot of upside in a lot of other countries in the world, but India is still ahead of the game on that, adding subscribers. Let's break this down further. During the same period, the growth of data was over 100%. But when you look at it, you're looking at a very small base, so that jump looks very large, but actually, in nominal terms, it's nothing. Measure that against the Asia Pacific numbers for the same period. We had 50% of Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is 50% of the world average. So where do we sit in terms of the world average? So, we've got this massive number of subscribers, but most of them are sitting in and I hesitate to use this word because it's probably been forgotten by a large number of people, in an analog world. They are not digital natives at all. So all this phrasing, digital natives and nomadic usage and 4K usage, it's there, but it's going to be for that tiny little percentage of the community. That, I think, is going to be the challenge that the Indian operator is going to face. Why? He's going to actually have to handhold his existing subscriber and walk him through a 2G and a 3G into a 4G world. That is going to be the change that the operators are going to find. So you're going to have operators operating at three different levels. A, there's going to be acquisition. And these guys are going to be new subscribers coming in on a 2G platform. Please remember, I don't think there's any subscriber coming in on a 3G direct network today. They're all coming in 2G first, and then they're going to be handheld and brought into a 3G environment. The second thing which the operator is going to have to do is, he's going to have to create an environment for migration into 3G. The 4G is not going to happen as a result of an operator's pushing. That's going to happen as a result of services being driven down to that subscriber. So he or she, as the case may be, is going to be nomadic in his or her usage as far as 4G is concerned. But it's that hand-holding from 2G into 3G which is going to take up the second challenge as far as the operator is concerned. And then I completely agree with Shyam that the challenge as far as the operator in terms of the backhaul is concerned is going to be monumental. Because the traffic is not linear as was the case in an analog world, in a voice world. It's going to be go straight through the roof. And in a wideband CDMA kind of environment, you're going to have cell shrinkage, and then suddenly you're going to find a situation where one cell site which could cover the whole of Gurgaon can now only cover Westin. And you're going to have to